not fragile. My married life is undergoing a lot of problems currently because of an incident from my past before I got into a relationship with my then boyfriend, now husband. My husband and I have an age difference of 9 years, but he is a very nice guy, very good looking, helping, understanding, and affectionate, and I love him a lot. But since a month, he has been acting horribly with me. Someone sent him photos of me kissing a guy I used to know, and since then he has been upset. Even my husband knew that guy because he was in our friend circle. The thing is, before I got into my relationship with my now husband, this guy friend of ours had entered our lives. He was an extremely handsome and a very mysterious man, and I admit we had a strange connection since the day I met him. Whenever I would meet him, I would go lost into his eyes and would find myself staring at him, even forgetting what I had to say to him. It was he who would start the conversation, but even he suffered from the same thing I used to suffer from. Our eyes would meet whenever we were around. But he had openly declared that he was not interested in marriage or relationships, and his only goal was to further his career without any distractions. He was here for a short time, maybe 1 year and just a week before he had to leave. He told me he wanted to take back some memories of mine, because he knew I liked him but never said it. I was so insanely attracted to him and his eyes, I still remember he had really alluring light brown eyes, that I agreed to all his demands. He wanted to stay with me for a week and we did, mostly bonding most of the time. He never let me out of his sight, and for a week, I stayed in with him at his house. The day he was leaving, he kissed me many times and left. He never appeared again. I forgot about it and got into a relationship with my boyfriend, whom I always liked, and I knew he liked me too, now my husband. We got married a year later. Someone knew about my past experience and they sent those photos to my husband, and I was forced to reveal everything about my past, which infuriated my husband. I am a submissive wife, so I listened to all he had to say. My only goal is to keep him happy and feel loved. But he now gives me the silent treatment, and when we get into fights, he accuses me, saying how many men I have slept with and how many I have cheated on him. I go to bed crying every single night. I tried my best to help him get over it, but he is still upset. He is emotional and jealous, and I am suffering from it. Last week I found out I was pregnant, and he accused me again that I am not as innocent as I seem and whose baby I am carrying. It was too painful for me to hear. I cannot leave him, but what do I do to help him get over my past? Please help me. I was friends with my husband before we got together. Even I don't know who took the photos and who sent him now. I was not in a relationship with my now husband when had the fling. We were friends that time. My husband did tell me about his past and I was fine with it. He never really asked me, so I never told him about mine. Comment: someone is mischief making, and I would not rule out your ex-lover. Speak to hubby and tell him it's the past that's where it belongs, and that you feel someone is trying to tear you both apart for their own ends. How recent is the pic and how long it was taken before you were married, etc. Anything in the pic that would identify a timeline to reassure him. But his ideal of you has been shattered, but that's not your fault. That's his for building up this image in his mind of what and who you are, or which is different from the reality of a red-blooded woman who was a singleton like he was and knew others and had a life, your own path to walk before the ring went on the finger. OP responds: I fulfill every wish of my husband. If I agreed to that guy's demands, I agree to all my husband's demands as well. How do I help him see me in a different light? He is a quiet person, but now he gives me the silent treatment when he is not arguing with me. He has been reciprocating a little bit. Earlier he wouldn't even let me touch him, but last night I hugged him and even kissed him, and thankfully he didn't push me back. But again today, he is acting cold. I admit I was madly attracted to him. I don't know what he had in him, but it was really intense. But now I care less about him. Even if he showed up, I wouldn't look at him. I only care about my husband and marriage. I don't have any desires for that guy. I just wrote what I used to feel about him, honestly. Just because I wrote it does not mean I still have feelings for him. My husband has been improving a little bit. He is no longer shouting at me or being rude. He also shared his feelings with me, and he suspects it's either him or someone who is playing mischief. I have tried my best to reassure him. His birthday is coming in 2 days. I can't bear to see him in this state. I explained my past in all honesty. Does not mean I feel less passionate for my husband. I feel much more for him than I would do for anyone else. If I were bored and thinking about my past lover like one person said here, I would never even bother about my husband and look for ways to contact my ex again. Yesterday, my husband proposed the idea that I should do the exact same thing with him, which I did with the fling guy. My husband did not ask for bonding until 2 months. He used to touch me a lot but was more on the getting to know side. But within 2 months, it became very difficult to control ourselves. I would go over to his house every day, sometimes even slept over, and it became extremely difficult to stay with him without touching him. Right now, he's calm. He is not being rude and is trying to be normal, just like he was before this issue. He kissed me before he left for the gym and told me to take rest. Half a year later, just when I thought everything had settled down and everything was back to normal, my ex showed up. Just 3 days ago, he showed up on my birthday. He knows I am married and I was expecting a baby, which is gone. I wasn't over my grief of losing my first child, and now this happened. My ex, with whom I had a week-long affair, decided to return, and the first thing he wanted to do was kiss me. I won't lie, I lost half of my self-control on seeing him again. I could never get over his eyes, and I just realized this now when I was literally hypnotized by him on just seeing him. He hugged me and told me how much he missed me and how he couldn't get over the time we spent together. He claims he tried his best to focus on his career as he never wanted to have any serious relationships, but it was impossible for him to forget me, and because he was haunted by all the memories we shared during our fling for such a long time, he had no option but to accept he had something else for me. I didn't know how to react. Part of me was happy because I will admit I have never been so crazily attracted to any man as much as I have been towards him. He tried to kiss me, but I somehow stopped him. His touch gave me goosebumps. I can't explain. I told him I am married and I love my husband, but he clearly said I don't love my husband as much as I love him. He admitted that he is here to get me because I belong to him, and him isn't going anywhere until I get with him. My husband does not know that he is back, and I am scared of telling him. I don't know what to do. I tried to ward off my feelings for my ex, but I find myself thinking about him. What do I do? I am at wit's end. My husband was on his business trip. How can I tell him? He will go mad. I don't know. I was happy with my marriage, but the moment I saw him face to face once again, I felt weird. I should be feeling sad or threatened, but I don't feel that way, and it's not a good sign. My ex showed up again while my husband was out, and he claimed we need to get together. I refused, but he wasn't bothered to listen. He said he can us divorced in just a few minutes, and he is back just to get me and isn't going anywhere without me. He even said he will speak to my husband personally if needed. My husband, on the other hand, has stopped talking to me completely. Whatever I say, he just listens and leaves. I don't know why he is acting like this. I don't have a clue about what he meant by divorce in a few minutes. I felt it was some kind of threat because his tone was full of sarcasm. It isn't hard to get a divorce here, which is what I am worried about. My husband has stopped talking to me, and we don't know about his next move. My family already dislikes my husband because of his recent behavior. In all honesty, I am tired of everything. I have faced a lot in the last 4 months and no longer have the stamina to deal with all this anymore. I don't know what my husband is trying to achieve by starting his silent treatment again. And then there is my ex, who is hell-bent on breaking up my marriage. I am tired of everything. I can't live in this fear each day. I've told my sister. My husband isn't talking to me anymore. Our marriage hit the rocks ever since something which didn't concern my husband affected him. I lost my first child, yet there wasn't much improvement in his attitude. My ex keeps saying he wants me back now. I'll admit I feel tempted. Update: my husband left me last month because of my ex's return in our lives. I did try to make one last attempt to reconcile with him, but he made it clear that I should go back to my ex and there is no future for us. He even said he does not love me and is not interested in our marriage, especially after the photos and the loss of our child. My ex destroyed my marriage. We had a fight regarding his intentions, and he said he liked me since ages and wanted me back anyhow. He had found out from his friends that I was married and he could not tolerate it, and he resolved to break it. Thus, he plotted the whole photos thing. I cried a lot and accused him of being horrid to me, but that time he was being supportive. I always had feelings for him, so I gave in to his wishes of wanting a relationship right away. I am not sure if I am doing right. I am completely confused. He has been caring and attentive to me. Like before, he is obsessed with sleeping with me and he won't let me go away from him. I don't know if this is wrong or right. I am completely lost and feel out of place. My mother says I shouldn't be in a relationship with him as he ruined my marriage, but my sister says he loves me, so that's all she cares about. I have no clue at all. My comment: there is just something that really bothers me about someone faithful and true, who trusted and was willing to give his or her all, continuing to cling to someone who melts for someone else. That's heartbreaking. So happy to hear husband didn't beg and plead but respected himself enough to cut ties, grieve the loss, and move on. He deserves the devotion he wants to give to another. I hope he finds a woman who will look at him that way. Story 2. I am a 37-year-old father of one boy, aged 8, and one girl, aged 10. My wife and I have been together a little over 2 years and married only a few months. This is my second marriage. She has 2 children, a girl, aged 6, and a boy, aged 13. It's her second marriage as well. We both work at the same company. I got her the position she currently has, but we did not meet at work. We are both quite successful in our jobs. Our relationship has had its ups and downs, like most, but the last 6 months have been particularly difficult, especially the time after our wedding. I used to be a big believer in sorting through conflict before moving on, but she sees it differently. She has told me in the past that sometimes it is better not to solve a conflict. Now I have no choice but to let things go many times. Before she and I got married, I requested on many occasions that we both go see a relationship counselor. She agreed and said she would set up the appointment, but after a few months and me checking in on when we were going, she told me it was embarrassing that we were not even married at the time and had to see a relationship counselor. I told her there was nothing embarrassing about it and that many couples see counselors prior to being married, and that they were probably stronger for it. After that, she simply refused to go, so I set up appointments for myself. My wife and I met in September of 2015 and began dating a month or so after that. I had been divorced from my previous wife for almost a year, and my current wife had only been divorced from her ex a few months but separated over a year as well. Things were going great for the first 3 or 4 months, although I always noticed she was quite protective and attached to her phone, and extremely secretive about email, passwords, her whereabouts. She would disappear for hours without returning a text or phone call, etc. When I say that she was very protective of her phone, I mean she had a passcode on it, would take it everywhere with her, bathroom, shower, closet when changing, everywhere, put the phone face down if I walked into a room and she was on it. She would not let it out of her sight. When I would ask her about her secrecy, she would respond that she is a very private person and doesn't like anyone checking up on her or knowing her passwords. 2. Her ex-husband was very jealous of her and would spy on her and follow her around, and she was not going to live like that anymore. She would then turn it on me and ask me why I was suspicious of her, and that she lived like that before and wouldn't do it again. I thought about what she said, and on some levels, it made sense. Also, we had only recently started dating, so I didn't feel I had any right to know all of the details of her day, so I chose to respect her privacy. I definitely didn't want to come across as needy and overbearing, so I accepted her reasons and moved on, hoping things would get better and she would open up the longer we dated. Then things began to really change. She became distant from me. I would come over to see her after work and she would not greet me at the door, give me a hug, kiss, no affection whatsoever. I would ask her why she was pulling back her affection, and she would say that sometimes she just doesn't feel affectionate, and that I just have to deal with that. She said this was a result of some ex she suffered when she was young. Okay, I get that too, and I can definitely understand how ex could do that to a person. Sometimes I don't feel like hugs and kisses, but to me, I was getting a much more serious vibe than that. The affection began slowly going away, to the point where she was actively pushing me away. I began suspecting something was up with her ex. They have kids together, so they are in constant contact. By this point, I had learned her passcode, and every once in a while, I could get her phone and sneak a peek. Oftentimes, I would see messages from her ex where he was asking her back, asking if they could reconcile, him saying he still loved her, etc. I didn't see much of her wanting him back, but I did see where she would contemplate reconciling with him for the kids. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, as she seemed to be handling it, but I couldn't help but worry. One day she told me she was going to meet her ex to get child support at around 10 a.m. and that she was then going to meet a friend for lunch. She let me know when she was there to meeting him, and then I didn't hear from her for almost 4 hours. When I asked her how her meeting with him went, and how lunch with her friend was, she told me she simply got the check from him and then met her friend. Something didn't seem right about her story. There were other details, but I'm leaving them out for length, so I checked her phone later that night, and saw a conversation with him where she was telling him how nice it was to see him, how nice it was to reconnect with him, and that she missed the days when they used to have fun like that. At that point, I assumed she actually had lunch with him and not a friend, but I don't know for sure. Not wanting her to know I had access to her phone, I acted like nothing was wrong for a few more days, and over those days, I saw indications of them wanting to get back together. I couldn't believe it. Anytime she would talk about him to me, he was always the abusive narcissist a whole, and she was nauseous just thinking about him. However, I saw a different story in her texts. Not really wanting to believe what I was seeing, and wanting to get more evidence, I didn't call her out on it, which didn't matter, because the day before my birthday, she informed me I was no longer welcome at her house and that she was getting back together with her ex. Fast forward 2 months, and apparently things were not going well with her and her ex, and she was looking to kick him out. She began texting me, asking me back, telling me how sorry she was for hurting me and that she knew what a big mistake she made. At first, I was extremely reluctant to even talk to her, but eventually I gave in. I asked her why she would move back in with her ex when she would continually tell me how much she hated him. She told me she had to do it for her kids. She said her kids were hurting so bad that she had to give it a try. She said that she realized being back there was worse for them, and that she was ready to leave again. I could sympathize with this, as I have children and stayed with my ex-wife for far longer than I should have and even considered reconciling, for the kids, after I left her. It took some time, but eventually she and I got back together, and things were good for a while. There were some hiccups along the way, but I will leave those details out for now. Eventually, she was much more open with her phone, opened up with her passwords, websites, whereabouts, etc. Things were good. Now a few years later, and after being married a few months, I am beginning to get that gut feeling that things are beginning to change again. She has now upgraded to the newest iPhone 6, which she made a very big deal about having because it has the fingerprint access on it. She now has it double locked down with the fingerprint and a passcode after that. Also, she has begun acting odd with our bank account, stashing quite a bit away in her own personal account that she still has from when she and I were not married. And sometimes, she disappears for an hour or so without any indication of where she is, which is not typical since we have been back together. She is usually very responsive to texts and phone calls. At this point, I think I might be overreacting, but given our history, I can't help but wonder sometimes. I believe my feelings right now are my own personal insecurities, due to my past, due to what happened between she and I, and due to some things she's told me about her past. I can feel the twinge of resentment beginning to creep in. I have been here before and I know this is not a good place to be, and this will only get worse if the problem is not resolved. What makes this issue more difficult is that I feel I cannot discuss my feelings openly with my wife without her becoming extremely angry with me and throwing all civility out of the window while we try to talk. Anytime we try to talk about anything serious like this, she escalates the disagreement to saying hurtful things like, "Why don't you just go sleep with the waitress from the other night? I'm sure you'd be happier with her anyway." Or saying that she may have made a mistake marrying me and that she would be happy if she was alone. One problem is the way she allows her children to rule the house, and my children are relegated to second-class citizen while they are with us. Here are a few examples. Our children come home in the afternoon after school and stay with a sitter until my wife gets home from work. My wife and I work together, but she leaves work first. Her son, who is 13, comes home and begins eating almost continually until she gets home. He will work his way through an entire bag of chips or box of goldfish in 1 or 2 afternoons. I approached my wife and asked if she would speak to him about moderation, and she responded that he is a growing boy and if he is hungry, she is not going to tell him he cannot eat something. However, the other day we got home and an entire new bag of chips had been eaten in 1 afternoon. We asked the children what happened, and her son blamed it on my daughter, age 10, saying she ate the entire bag in 1 sitting. My wife pulled me aside and said, "You need to talk to her. She doesn't need to eat an entire bag of chips in 1 afternoon." While I do agree with the idea, I don't like how it is unfairly directed at my child only. I responded, why it is okay for her son to eat a box of goldfish in 1 afternoon but my daughter cannot have chips. She responded, there is a big difference in chips and goldfish. Chips are junk and goldfish are at least a little healthy. I told her that was BS and that each were junk food, but either way, I wouldn't tell her she couldn't have anything since she doesn't with her son. I also told her that didn't sound like anything my daughter would do. This caused a big argument between the two of us, with her accusing her son of being a liar, which he is prone to do, and she will admit that when it suits her. We went back to talk to both of them about the situation and I pressed her son a little more. He finally admitted that he helped with eating the bag of chips, and increased a little resentment. Her children are unruly and both have had behavioral problems in school. These behavioral problems carry over into the home, with them both not doing what they are asked to do, and often outright telling my wife or me no, or being very argumentative when asked or told to do something. When they do this to me or my wife, I look at my wife, the expression on my face saying, are you going to allow them to talk to you, me, us like that? Each time, the answer is yes. She will usually placate them by saying she will get them a treat if they do what she wants. Her son will often get in trouble at school or at home and lose his privileges for a day or a week or a month, whatever the time is. She will say, that's it. Your privileges are gone for 1 week, and I mean it this time. However, we all know she will forget about it and he will be right back at his video games in 2 days, sometimes not even that long. It's interesting, because she will ask me questions like, why are my kids so bad? Am I doing something wrong? And I will sometimes, when I am feeling particularly fed up with the situation, give her honest feedback such as illustrating that her children know she will not hold them accountable for their action, and they know there are no consequences for their behavior. She gets upset at this, and just argues with me saying she is busy or tired and just doesn't have the energy to stay on top of them all the time. She will usually lash out at my kids in this situation, saying something like, oh, and your kids are perfect, in a sarcastic tone. To be fair, both of her children have been diagnosed with ADHD and mine have not. On the other hand, if my daughter gets sassy with me, my wife will pull me aside and demand I punish her. She will demand that I not let her talk to us and have respect for us ... and increase a little more resentment. And money, don't get me started on money. She will spend hundreds of dollars on her daughter in clothes, shoes, underwear, haircuts. But if I say I need to get my daughter socks or more pants or whatever, she will say to me something like, does she really need that? Another problem is that I am a clean and orderly person and she is an absolute mess. Now, I knew this going into the marriage, so this one is sort of on me. But the problem comes in when I try to clean. I also end up doing her kids' chores because she doesn't make them do them. She will get upset at me and ask me why I am cleaning all the time. She says that it makes her feel guilty and she doesn't like it. Before we got married, she said to me, I hope you don't get upset with me when I don't clean. I responded, I hope you don't get upset with me when I do. She asked why I thought she would get upset at me for cleaning. Well, this is exactly what I meant. Oftentimes I will get home from work and the kitchen and house will be a wreck. I will proceed to clean it up until about 10 p.m., because if I do not, no one will. I also clean the toilets, vacuum and sweep the floors on the weekends while she sits around playing games on her iPhone. There are plenty other examples of these types of double standards and issues causing resentment to creep in, but I am going to leave it here for now. I have been reading No Nicer Guy and have been feeling pretty good about the ideas and concepts in the book. I am definitely textbook nice guy, including many of the no-so-nice traits. Wanting to be open and talk about this with my wife, I tell her on the way home from work tonight that I have been thinking about things and would like to talk to her and get her thoughts. So, we get home, and as I am making dinner, I begin telling her that I have been reading something that has opened up my eyes to some of my behavior that is causing problems in our relationship, and my relationship with other people, work, friends. I begin describing to her some of the things I have read in the book but haven't yet told her where the ideas are coming from. She stops me and asks where I am getting this stuff from, and I tell her I had started reading a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. At that point, I see an instant change in her facial expression and demeanor, and I ask her what's wrong. She asks me to repeat the name of the book, and I tell her again. She proceeds to tell me that she is very familiar with the book and the guy who wrote it. She says he is notorious among her narcissist, bored friends, and that he pretty much instructs guys on how to mistreat women and be $sign holes. She tells me that she is very uncomfortable with me reading this book, and that just the thought makes her want to majorly freak out. I try to explain to her that what I've read so far seems very applicable to me, and could be extremely helpful to us. I explained how it talks about my propensity for passive aggressiveness, avoiding conflict, etc., and that it discusses techniques to reduce that type of behavior, which she and I both agree are not healthy. She went on to say that she was previously married to a $sign hole, and she wouldn't do that again. I said if it worries her so much, she and I can read it together and discuss each section, talking about what we agree with and do not agree with. She said that would be fine if only I could see it from her perspective and not think that she was disagreeing with the book because it was beneficial for her to do so. I told her that I was simply trying to figure out how I can be better in our marriage and in my other relationships, and she told me that the book was known for its abusive mentality towards women and advocated woman-hating. But if that is what I wanted to become, she wouldn't be able to stop me, and I would do with the information what I wanted anyway. At this point, I am exasperated with the situation. It seems my wife and I cannot go more than 5 days without getting into major arguments. In between the major arguments, we have the typical small things that come up, but the frequency of the big arguments is what really gets to me. She says it is normal for couples and she expects them. I feel like we have these big arguments too often. What do you think is typical? Last Tuesday we had pretty big argument and could not come to a resolution, so we kind of let it go and moved on. After that, we had a good Thanksgiving and have even been talking about how nice things have been between us the last few days. Then today happened. She and I work together and things can get stressful there. Today she ended up snapping at me at work, which took me a bit by surprise. In the past, she has asked that when she does something to upset me, I should talk to her about it then instead of letting it linger and build up resentment over time. So, tonight, thinking about her advice and what happened today, as we were making dinner, she asked me what was on my mind. She could see it on my face. Instead of keeping it in, I told her how I was feeling, which in turn started yet another argument where she was calling me names, saying she just cannot deal with me anymore, and that sometimes I just need to know when to keep my mouth shut about things. I told her that I was simply doing what she asked, that when something was on my mind to bring it up. She said my timing was bad and I need to learn when some things are a big deal and others are not. I told her that in the past, I kept the way I was feeling quiet because this is exactly what happened, and that her blowing up like this only makes me want to keep my feelings quiet again. I told her that it is difficult for me to know what her rules are about bringing up what's on my mind. She said that she cannot give me a script and that I just need to listen to her and learn when it is appropriate to bring up things and when it is not. I am very frustrated. In our argument last Tuesday, she wanted me to stop stockpiling things that she's done to upset me and to talk about them as they happen. Yet I did that today and it turns into a huge argument. On the plus side, she finally agrees that we need counseling due to our lack of communication, among other issues, and has agreed to go with me. She says that it makes her very sad that we need to see a counselor not even 3 months after being married. Couple months later, my wife and I had our first marriage counseling session yesterday. This is not the first time either of us have been in marriage counseling, although previously it was with both of our now ex-spouses. After our session, she texted me and told me she felt she could not go through with it and felt like she couldn't change. I reassured her we could make a positive change in our relationship if we stuck with it, but she was emphatic that she didn't think she could do it. Later that day while we were at work, she and I worked together, we got on the subject of the recent physical dysfunction in our relationship. She referenced a discussion she and I had the other day about how her behavior towards me during and after bonding. She often gets angry with me for not doing something right, or she gets upset and cries during or after bonding, has caused me to be anxious about sleeping with her, and then how this anxiety is causing me to have physical dysfunction of my own. She asked me what she could do about that, and I told her that I want to talk to her about it, but work was not the time or place to do so. So, we tabled the discussion until later that evening. That evening after the children went to bed, we were in our room and she brought up the topic again. She told me that she would like to talk to me about why she didn't feel like she could go back to marriage counseling, and why she felt like she couldn't change. She then proceeded to tell me that for the 2.5 years she and I have been together, that she has been faking enjoying bonding. She said that her traumatic childhood experiences, she was exed by a family member, as well as family friends I have recently found out, have caused her to tune out and not be present during bonding. She says to survive the experience, she has to go someplace else mentally and play a part while she is bonding, so I will think she is enjoying it. I have known about the ex, but she has always reassured me that bonding between us is her safe place and that she loves the closeness that it brings for us. Now she is telling me that none of that was true and that she has been acting the entire time. She then told me that she was so worried that I would bring up bonding in our counseling session that she was almost paralyzed during the session. She told me she didn't want me to bring it up at all and that she wouldn't be able to talk about it if I did and that she would just deny it. She said this was the reason she didn't think she could change and didn't think she could go through with our counseling. After she told me this, I didn't know what to say, but I wanted to be caring and empathetic to her feelings and what she is going through. I told her that I would not bring it up and that she could bring it up in our sessions when she felt comfortable, although this is going to be difficult because a lot of our recent issues have been related to bonding. She said that she has been going to a counselor since she was a child, and she has never talked about it. This was a big surprise to me. She has always told me that she dealt with these issues in her adolescence and teenage years with her counselors. Now she is telling me she didn't actually talk about this with them, and that she doesn't with her current counselor. I don't really know what to believe now. At that point I was thinking to myself that she has been untruthful with me these past several years on several key topics. Despite that, I tried to be empathetic and told her that we could work through all of this with our current counselor, and in her own time. She reiterated that she wouldn't talk about it, and that she couldn't change. She then asked me, "And do you really want to be with someone that is not present with you when you are sleeping with them?" I told her that I loved her and that we could work through all of that. She got more upset at that and said she was done with the conversation. Not wanting to push her, I left it at that and we moved on to another subject. My mind is going to several places at once. I am empathetic to her pain and know she needs my support, which I fully intend to give. However, this makes me even more anxious about sleeping with her because now I know she actually doesn't like it and it causes her great emotional stress. She tells me she wants to be close to me and needs that intimacy, but once she is in the act of bonding, she has to switch her mind off. This is the reason she has become increasingly more and more combative with me during and after bonding. She has told me in the past that she wants me to be rough with her during bonding and throw her around a little. Last night she told me that she wants that because that is how she learned bonding was when she was small. How can I do this with her when I now know that I am playing the part of her past ex? Another thought in my head was when she asked me why I would want to be with someone who isn't present during bonding was that she is trying to push me away. I am not sure where to go from here. 2 years later, my wife and I have been together about 4 years and married just over 2 years. This is the second marriage for both of us, and we both have 2 children from our previous marriage. We've always had a tumultuous relationship that I've discussed in previous posts from 2017 and 2018. Things got better in late 2018 and 2019 had a much more positive outlook. That is, until I lost my executive, high-paying job of 5 years in February of 2019. Company was sold, no fault of my own. Things began to go downhill fast after that. After losing my job, my wife became very concerned for our financial future, understandably. We discussed many options and possibilities. I began looking for another position immediately, but we had 6 to 8 months of savings to sustain us, and my wife also makes low 6 figures at her job, so things weren't dire at that time. I have owned my own successful business before, and I told my wife I had an interest in starting another business. She expressed her concern with this idea, basically telling me she didn't want to take the risk because she was used to a certain lifestyle and didn't want to lose it. In one of our conversations, she actually said to me, "I'm afraid of losing all this stuff," as she pointed around the room. Because of her apprehension, I decided not to pursue self-employment. I continued looking for employment while doing consulting work so that I was bringing in some money. I was having trouble finding a job with comparable compensation to what I had been making before. In July, I was offered a job that really interested me, but the pay was about 50% of what I had been making but had good potential if I could build the company. We weren't at the end of our rope financially, but we were seeing our savings dwindle, so after some discussion with my wife, I decided to accept the position and keep my eye open for other opportunities that paid more. I thought this would make my wife happy, and it did in the beginning. After taking the position, we were able to stop dipping into savings, and we actually had $1,000 left over each month after paying bills. However, she began making comments like, "Does it bother you that I make 3 times as much as you? And that I might need to look into getting another job because I wasn't pulling my weight financially." I was confused at this because she and I had discussed these issues before I accepted the job and we were both fine with the income disparity. Fast forward to October 2019. My wife told me she was no longer going to pay my bills. She was referring to my car payment, student loans, etc., and that she was tired of supporting me and my kids and wasn't going to do it any longer. She said she was tired of being used for her paycheck and didn't want her money going to pay for my bills. I was hurt because I supported her and her kids when we were dating and helped her get back on her feet after her divorce, and now that I was down, she wouldn't support me. Long story short, she pulled all of the money out of our account, checking and savings, deposited it into her personal account, then began moving towards separation. She purchased a house in early December and is moving out of our home December 30th. That's the backstory, but here's the real reason for the post. I know this is a good thing, given what she and I have been through, see my earlier post, so I'm not fighting the separation and divorce. I'm actually looking forward to it and positive about my life once this mess is done. My problem is, now I find myself extremely cynical about love and romance. I am not interested in a relationship anytime soon, but I don't know that I can ever be married again. I now have a complete lack of trust and don't think I can ever put my life and my decision-making ability in the hands of someone else. I also find myself thinking things like, don't do it, when I see happy couples on TV talking about getting married. In a nutshell, the whole idea of love, romance, and marriage seems like a sham. I've never been like this and don't want to be, but it's where I am now after the person in my life that was supposed to pick me up when I am down decided to drop me when I needed her the most. My comment: no matter what you do, Opus, for pity's sake, figure out what it is about you that's willing to marry someone you've already got a tumultuous relationship with. I mean, it was bad enough that you were posting about it over the course of 2 years, and yet you got married anyway. What is it inside you that thought this would be a good idea? Are you afraid of being alone? Drawn to drama? So, attracted to the woman that you're willing to tolerate a high degree of strife? Why marry when the relationship already had a proven track record of being rocky? Did you think the ceremony would magically fix all the issues, or that she would change if she really loved you? Marriage doesn't work that way.